Bills Mafia, we are back. Welcome to Buffalo Late Night. We are going to talk about all that led into the NFL draft, my time in Detroit. We're going to do some roster construction conversation, and then we're going to finalize with a little NFL schedule talk. Let's get it.
In the city where the snow falls thick, we rise up where the buffalo click. Under Friday night lights, we come alive. Bills Mafia, stand up. Let's take this dive. From the tailgate parties to the parking lot, we bleed red and blue. This is our spot. We're the loudest in the stadium. Don't you know? Buffalo Late Night. Let the good times flow. Buffalo Late Night. We're ready to ignite. With the Bills on the field, we'll shine so bright. With a heart and soul of this football town. Buffalo Late Night will never slow down. I'll never slow this football town. Buffalo Late Night will never slow down. Let the good times flow. Buffalo Late Night will never slow down. Let the good times flow. Buffalo Late Night, we're ready to ignite. With the Bills on the field, we'll shine so bright. With a heart and soul of this football town. Buffalo Late Night will never slow down.
Bills Mafia, what is going on? Welcome back, man. How's it going? It's I'm very excited to be talking with you guys tonight. Obviously, I am back in my home studio. You guys saw me for a couple days. Myself, Joe DeRosa, John Helmkamp, and my brother were in Detroit covering the draft. An exciting time, absolutely. And, you know, obviously we were all over the place. We were in the kitchen. I was making coffee. But we are back. We are back home, and I'm glad. I'm glad to get everything back set up. It took a little bit to get it all situated. But welcome to Buffalo Late Night. I am incredibly glad that you guys are here. My name is Thomas DeLaw, so you can find me on Twitter at the Thomas DeLaw. You can see that right there. Again, so glad that you've chosen to watch this tonight on Cover One Sports Network. Got a great show for you. Again, if you are tuning in tonight, glad to have you with us. If not, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple, however you pod, happy Friday to you. You can find our show free on all social media and streaming platforms, including Spotify, YouTube, or however you choose to pod. And if you're watching on YouTube right now, or Twitter, hopping over to YouTube, come join the conversation. I want to make sure you guys are subscribed to our YouTube page. Hit that notification button. It'll let you know every single time one of our shows is live. But let's get right into it tonight. So let's get right into the conversation. We got a bunch to talk about. As you can see across the top of the header, tons of stuff. How many cups tonight? How many cups of beer or how many cups of coffee? I haven't had any coffee today, so we're running on just pure adrenaline. But as you can see, we got the NFL draft roster and schedule talk. So we're going to be breaking it all down tonight. But let's get right into talking about the draft. Let's talk about what happened. Let's talk about my experience, how that all kind of chopped up, and really just the overall me being in Detroit. Because obviously, it was my first time being in Detroit covering the NFL draft, which, first and foremost, what an unbelievable experience. If you've never been to the NFL draft, highly, highly suggest it. Next year it is in Green Bay at Lambeau. And I can't even truly put into words. I've been to some wild experiences. You know, just a week prior, I saw Luke Combs at Highmark Stadium, and just the sheer amount of people was very just like it was kind of wild. This was a whole different ballgame. The sheer amount of people that were at this event was bananas. The crowd, the electricity, the excitement. It was unlike anything I think I've ever been a part of before. And really just the onslaught of coverage. Obviously, myself, Joe DeRosa, John Helmkamp, and my brother we're in the media side, so we were in our own room. They had us basically in a holding tank, this huge room where there was, day one, like 500 plus media people. And so it was a different experience because you're kind of off the beaten path from where everything was, but still a very exciting time. A lot going on. Obviously, with the draft, there was tons of crazy stuff happen. The Michael Penix Jr. pick, you would have thought everybody was watching a live action car accident right in front of us with the way that the response, a very visceral, emotional response. So very interesting there. But just a overall wild experience. We sat there, we went outside, we went to the main area where everybody was standing to wait for the Bills to pick, and stood there and watched the Bills trade it away, watched the Bills then traded away again into the next round. It was definitely intriguing to say the least. But let's talk about the draft. Let's talk about what happened. I know a lot of people have kind of gone down this a bit, but I do want to kind of really get into the nitty gritty of what happened, what my feelings are, how I kind of feel everything chopped up, and what I think and how they did. So obviously we know that the Bills went ahead and traded from 28 to 32. And I do want to talk about that real quick, the trade from 28 to 32, because I do think it's important. When you trade like that, there's an inherent feeling amongst fans of not only the why, but there better be a legitimate a return, but a feeling about it, right? And I think the tough part was when you trade with a team like the Kansas City Chiefs in that moment, right? Obviously, any trade from 28, especially when you're waiting all day, Bills fans, I mean, the 6 months prior of the build up to the draft, the week leading up to it, the day of, there was so much just built up emotion, some just curiosity as to what exactly the Bills might do. What was Brandon Beane's idea? There was talks of him trading up for Roma Dunze. There was thoughts of maybe trading to the mid-20s for Brian Thomas Jr. There wasn't really a set-in-stone answer as to what exactly was going to happen. So as the draft kind of went along and you saw things kind of fall the way they were falling, there was a lot of heightened emotion, a lot of heightened feeling as to what could happen. And I think once you got into the mid-20s, it was, okay, well, Brian Thomas Jr. went to the Jacksonville Jaguars, so that's out of the picture. Now is it, Keon Coleman? There was some kind of weird feeling about him with obviously being a contested catch receiver. I talked about it. If you guys watched the live coverage, you heard me talk about it, how I was kind of apprehensive. And I'll call it like I see it. A couple months ago, I was on the Keon train. I kind of softened because I was a little nervous about it. And I will tell you, I watched every target and every reception from this past season for Keon Coleman. And I'm going to talk about that in a second and my feelings on it. But obviously there was some sentiments there. There was some feelings amongst Bills fans. It was a little questionable as to if he was the guy. You had A.D. Mitchell was another big name right there. Xavier Worthy, Xavier Legette, Lad McConkey, right? There was a bunch of names that were the regulars, let's call them. And when it got to that point where all the names were still on the board, nobody had taken a wide receiver to that point, and it got to 28, it was the Bills are going to get whoever they want at that point, whoever they want. And so then when they went on the clock, the excitement of, okay, who's going to be turned into they traded with the Chiefs is a very weird feeling, because very seldom is the best idea trading with your biggest nemesis. Very seldom is the best idea saying, hey, Kansas City, a team that has literally beaten us in the playoffs every year, you can choose whatever receiver you want before us. And so that emotional reaction, that feeling was very real. Very real. John Helmkamp damn near had a coronary. And some Bills fans that were out there were kind of like, what's going on? Why is this happening? And I think for me, I just kind of stood there gobsmacked, very dumbstruck, because I didn't know what to think. I did not anticipate a trade, let alone with the Chiefs. So that was very weird. And the fact that that happened, and then you're sitting there saying, okay, well, you know who they're going to take. There's only one reason the Kansas City Chiefs are trading up. You know they're trying to get that speed. You know, since they lost Tyreek Hill, they were trying to recoup that. That's exactly what they did. They went for, Xavier Worthy. And so I guess my sentiment on it, and I spoke to this that very next morning, the morning after the trade on day 2, and I'd said, when it comes to stuff like this, it's not surprising that it happens. You have to just understand that there's a plan in place for Brandon Beane. And there was. You didn't want Xavier Worthy, and that's fine. We all convinced ourselves that that's what they wanted. There was media outlets that sat there and talked about it, that they wanted Xavier Worthy, and it obviously was not the case. They obviously did not want Xavier Worthy. In fact, I don't think they even thought Xavier Worthy was in the realm of possibilities for them, and that's fine. I think what it came down to was they're in a good spot for themselves where they say, okay, we've got a list of 4 or 5, 6 guys that if we drop back a few spots, we don't have to worry. And that's what they did. They traded back, and then they traded again with the Carolina Panthers, dropped to 33, first pick of the second round, and they took Keon Coleman. Now, like I said, I took some time and I watched every rep from Keon Coleman last year, every target, every reception. And I will tell you the overarching sentiment that I've got about Keon Coleman is that the feeling, including myself, was way overdone. Way overdone. He's only a contested catch receiver was way overdone. He can't separate was an absolute misnomer. The fact that he's going to come in and be asked to be an immediate player on this offense, I don't think should be overlooked. In fact, I think he has absolutely the ability. If you watched his quarterback last year, he put Keon in such a bad spot so often that Keon literally had to play Superman to him. And I talked to somebody earlier and he had said, oh, they did terrible in the playoffs. Of course they did. First off, they didn't have their quarterback. But second off, Keon Coleman was always asked to do way more than he had to. And the passes were erratic. There was very little accuracy in that offense. He forced Keon to make passes or forced Keon the ball in times that didn't need to be there. And if you really look at the way that Keon had to produce, it was really having to just be a contested catch receiver in moments that wasn't necessary, where other receivers were better. There was better options available, but he forced it to Keon Coleman because, of course, Keon Coleman is the number 1 receiver on that offense for the Florida Seminoles. So it made sense. Go to him. Why not? Right? Take the best option in that moment and throw it to Keon Coleman. So my thought is with that, if you look at it, Keon Coleman is really what he was. He was a guy that was put into an offense that hyper elevated him to be something in that moment that it didn't have to be. And I do think Keon Coleman gets the Josh Allen treatment to a degree, not to the fullest extent. Obviously, Josh Allen had a very tumultuous entrance into the NFL. He was treated that he was never going to succeed. That Josh Allen was a massive project. And to some degree it was. We obviously know that, coming from a JUCO school to then going to Wyoming, not a Power 5. Obviously that's something that was of concern. And rightfully so. And I think there is concern with Keon, right? Keon is very new to the sport. He was a dual sport player, played baseball, played football, stopped playing baseball, really focused on football. So it's going to be a growing process, not in a bad way per se. I don't think it's a bad thing that Keon Coleman's in, and I don't think it's something that you don't have to be fearful, because here's the thing, and this is the best part about Keon Coleman, right? I know people's like, oh my God, they're going to ask him to do a lot. Sure, of course. He's coming to the offense. Josh is going to force him the ball. Josh is just going to do it. But there couldn't be a better position for him to be in than to come into this Bills offense. And I'm going to kind of segue with back and forth with the draft in with the roster because obviously they parallel. Duh. When it comes to the receiver core, you've got Keon Coleman, but you also have Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel. You've got Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. And then at running back, you've got James Cook and Ray Davis, Ty Johnson. And the reason I say this couldn't be a better position, like if you put Keon Coleman and Keon Coleman went to, let's say the Patriots, right? Patriots didn't have a ton of options. They didn't have a very talented receiver core. They had a couple guys. Kendrick Bourne's fine. Oh, basketball, excuse me, not baseball. Though I do believe he played baseball earlier. But correct, thank you. When you look at it, in normal offenses and other teams, he might have to come in and he would be everything to the team. Whereas for the Buffalo Bills, the number one target on this team is more than likely going to be Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid, probably mixed with a Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir. And I could see Khalil Shakir being a very high piece in this offense. I mean, the trust level that Josh has with Khalil and the fact that Khalil is booming. I mean, his stock is rising at such an unbelievable rate. I could see him being a very big proponent in this offense. So Keon Coleman coming in here, and obviously there's going to be concern. You want him to succeed. 33rd pick. They traded back. They could have had Leggett. They could have had Worthy. They could have had Ladd McConkey. I guess they could have had Ricky Pearsall, right? Nobody thought Ricky Pearsall would go in the first round. Love Ricky. Very happy for Ricky. I know he's going to be a stud in the NFL. He was a stud at Florida. But if you look at this team, right? And by the way, cheers to all you guys. Glad you guys are here, Buffalo Late Night. Make sure you hit the thumbs up, rate, review, share. I appreciate you all. But if you're talking about this offense and how it's constructed, I think what Brandon Beane, and I will say this, great comment. Brandon Beane is a hell of an executive. I fully have trust in the guy. Trust he has a plan for this year and beyond. I agree wholeheartedly. And so the reason I like that comment is because of what I was just saying. I think he has insulated Keon Coleman and in this offense that he doesn't have to be like unbelievably successful. Obviously you want him to be. And if he is, it's great. It's gravy. But I think that the way that Brandon Beane has built this offense, he's built it in such a way that you saw how they went last year. At the end of last year in the playoffs, Stephon Diggs was almost a non-contributor. Gabe Davis was an absolute ghost in this offense, no disrespect. So it was Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid, quite frankly, carrying the load for this team. So if you look at that, him going into this offense, adding in a Curtis Samuel, which, by the way, I think you guys aren't ready for Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel is going to be damn good in this team, like really good. I am very excited to see what Curtis Samuel can contribute into this offense. His separation, his hands, his elusiveness, his route running. He's everything that you guys have asked for a number of years. He's very talented. And don't I haven't said this in a while. My wife's going to laugh. Don't get it twisted. He's a very good receiver who has been a byproduct of shitty quarterback play since he's gotten into the league. I've tweeted this before, but go ahead. I want you to go take a look at who Curtis Samuel's played with as quarterback. It's not a flattering list. Curtis Samuel has been, unfortunately, at the mercy of very bad quarterback play. So besides that, like I was saying, you got good receivers. And the other part, I tweeted this just the other day, which if you don't follow me on Twitter, go ahead, hit me with a follow. Like I've said, once we hit 10,000 followers, if I hit 10,000 followers before September 1st, I will be giving away 2 tickets to the home opener. So go ahead, hit me with a follow on Twitter at the Thomas DeLoss right there. But I tweeted the other day, Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Dalton Kincaid, the 4 of them in 2023 had a drop percentage of 3.4%. And the reason that's important in with this, yeah, Tyler Heineke is catching strays. I like Taylor. I like Taylor, but the reality is Taylor's not Josh Allen and never will be. The reason I mentioned the drop percentage is Brandon Beane obviously went out of his way to find a core group of receivers Because we saw what happened with Stephon Diggs, what happened with Trent Sherfield, what happened with Gabe Davis. They were dropping passes left and right. It was a massive concern. The trust that Josh Allen had was withering because he knew when he was throwing the ball, the hell if he knew if they were going to catch it. And that's a problem. So Brandon Beane, made a concerted effort, and people said, well, he went out of his way for what? No, he made a concerted effort to get receivers, including Dalton Kincaid, guys that he knows that Josh will trust, guys that he knows Josh can throw the ball to that have sure hands. And that's important. And that's important for what I'm talking about with Keon Coleman coming into this offense, because Keon Coleman doesn't have to be everything. He doesn't have to be the end-all, be-all to this offense. What he does have to be is just a steady contributor. That's fine. Because guess what? In this offense, that's what we have. Steady contributors. And that's what you want. If you look at Brady, right? Tom Brady in the best years in the New England Patriots, that team, those teams were filled to the brim with receivers with good hands, steady contributors that he could rely on in a moment's notice. Whether it was Julian Edelman or James White, Falk, Rob Gronkowski, right? You had, I can't even think of the two slot guys that they had. They had a litany of options that consistently had good hands. And on top of that, the other side of the good hands, and Marquise Goodwin ran a 4.27, right? We can find those outliers to everything. Quarterbacks have had strong arms. Just because they had strong arms doesn't mean they're Josh Allen. Welcome, Ian, 15, Chiefs Kingdom. He added speed. Curtis Samuel, big time speed, right? He added KJ Hamler. I think Welker, thank you. Welker's another good one. Absolutely. Good hands, reliable targets. That's what Josh Allen now has. Reliable hands, reliable targets. And at the end of the day, that's what you want for Josh, right? That was, if you look at Josh at the beginning of his career, it was just a shit crop of receivers, if we're being fair. Kelvin Benjamin, gosh, I can't even remember. I tweeted the terrible receivers, just a litany of bad options. And then the next year, they went and got John Brown and Cole Beasley, right? And gave Josh guys that he could rely on, guys that he knew if he could get the ball out, good hands, reliable targets, right? That's important. Then what happened? He brought in Stephon Diggs. And Stephon Diggs is great. And this is not to downplay Stephon. Stephon was a huge piece to this offense and a huge reason for success in Josh's growth into this offense. And Josh will tell you that. It's not to say that Stephon also didn't benefit from it, so that's not it either. But Stephon was great. And Gabe Davis was a nice ancillary piece, and so was Dawson Knox. But what was the big part to that? Dawson Knox, Gabe Davis, big-time question with their hands. Big-time question marks with their hands. So Brandon Beane, who is a chameleon of sorts when it comes to building rosters, and you can look, back when they were, not being able to beat the Chiefs, what happened? They needed a pass rusher because that's what happened. So they went and they got Von Miller. Huge. They saw that Travis Kelce was a huge proponent of beating teams in 12 personnel. What'd they do? They extended Dawson Knox and they added Dalton Kincaid. What did they do this offseason? They wanted to provide Josh Allen targets that were reliable, that were steady, that created yards after the catch, that had speed, that had elusiveness, that had good route running, and that could stay on the field. Now, Curtis Samuel's a question mark. His health has been a little bit in question, but I think the rest of the group is good. They're healthy. So they got a good core. So that's why when I mentioned Keon Coleman, when they bring Keon Coleman in, they've got a core group that they can rely on so that build up for him, which I know you heard Brandon Beane saying we need to, hit the ground running with Keon. He needs to be a part of this offense early and often. I think that's true. I mean, he's not going to sit there and say like, oh, we drafted Keon, he's going to sit on the bench. They're not going to sit there and say that. One, it doesn't help Keon's confidence, but two, it's not a good look. But they can onboard him at a much more steady process and take their time onboarding him because they've got him insulated with really good options around him. James Cook, very good receiving running back. Ray Davis, very good receiving option. Ty Johnson, a much underrated receiving option. Obviously, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox coming back. It is what it is. They're really good. I think it's just one of those things. If you look at the way they've built this team, they've made sure that they got good pieces. Then, let's move on from Keon, right? We'll keep talking about this. We went and drafted Cole Bishop in the second round. I think a really nice option, a very underrated draft pick right there. 6'2", and we'll put this on the screen right there. Cole Bishop out of Utah, safety with our second round pick, number 60. A really, really nice selection. Really nice selection. A guy that, I know that, again, there's potential that they don't feel he's going to start immediately. I think he's probably going to win the job from Taylor Rapp. And if not, he's going to be on the field a whole hell of a lot. Him, Mike Edwards, Taylor Rapp. And to be honest with you, there's still a lot of time left. A lot of time left. There's still guys like Justin Simmons out there that absolutely are looking for a home. And don't be surprised if the Bills are still in the market to add more. And that's the same thing to be said for wide receiver. And speaking of wide receiver in the free agent market, there's a ton of names out there. Ton of names. And we'll talk more about that stuff in wide receiver. But before I go any bit further, guys, obviously part of Cover One is our Cover One Pass. It gives you all the best analysis, all the best of the Slack channel, Greg Thompson's glossary, which tells you all about the salary cap. But I'm going to leave it to them to tell you about it. I'm going to tell, Aaron Quinn and Greg Thompson, the Cover One Buffalo hosts, guys, let them know what they are in for.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
There you are, guys. That's Greg and Aaron telling you about the Cover One Pass. Make sure you sign up for that. Very much appreciate it. It helps us be able to do things like continue to provide the best content and analysis out there. So let's continue on about this conversation. Obviously, in terms of this draft, Cole Bishop, great addition right there. Very familiar with Dalton Kincaid, as they were teammates the year prior. And Dalton Kincaid he said it himself. Cole locked him down. And you saw how good Dalton Kincaid was this past year. So if Cole Bishop can lock down Dalton Kincaid, it's a hell of a draft pick. Obviously, then they went ahead and they drafted Dwayne Carter out of Duke, a very big favorite of a lot of people, including Bruce Nolan, a guy that is high energy, super, super good, just a person, player, high motor, really good hands, really good base, super good. I mean, can really anchor in there and just drive that pocket, kind of force the depth of the pocket, which is great. And that's what you want. You want defensive tackles who can help defensive ends, defensive tackles playing off of each other, forcing the depth of the pocket in, allowing the defensive ends to kind of collapse. So that's a big one right there. Ray Davis, great draft pick, really nice running back. I know a lot of people are questioning in terms of why they got another running back. You never can take too many running backs at that point in the draft. Every couple of years you're going to be refreshing, and getting a guy like Ray Davis can do multiple things. He kind of fits the speed side, but also the physicality and the good hands. That's great. Cedric Van Pran Granger, a really nice starting center, a guy that started 400 games for Georgia at center, or 400 snaps, excuse me, this past year. Really, really good center. And a guy that I think could push to start, truly. He's a mauler. He fits that Osiris Torrance mold. Obviously, it bumps David Edwards out as that sixth, puts Connor McGovern back to his natural spot at left guard. I could see them going there. Adafwan Olafasio, linebacker out of Washington, a guy that's really kind of a jack of all trades, can kind of play both positions, both weak and Will and Mike. So that's a really nice depth position there. A guy that can kind of shore up that backside. Javon Solomon is a really, really nice, a shorter defensive end. A guy that if he was a little taller, he has good arm length, good wingspan. Really good stats. 16 sacks this past year for Temple. Just doesn't have the height. Being 6 foot, that was a tough one for him. That's why he kind of dropped down. But I'll tell you, if there's a team that can pick really good 5th round picks, it's Brandon Beane and the Bills. So I look for Javon Solomon to make an immediate impact this year. High motor guy, really good technique, very bendy. Kind of a compact defensive end, which is a little bit more of a change of pace from their traditional aspect. So I really, really like that. Tylen Grable is going to be more of a kind of a project per se at left tackle. Right tackle kind of has that swing flexibility. But a guy that has a lot, super big, 6'7" guy, very, very talented. I think he's one of those ones that you get Cromer, kind of mold him into clay. And that's the same thing for Travis Clayton, part of that international pathway program. Another guy that, just to work and kind of have those toolsy guys that maybe can grow, and hopefully you can stash him away. Obviously, Travis, you can stash him away because he's an exemption. So you can put him on the practice squad. Nobody can take him, which is great. And then Daquan Hardy, nice little cornerback. Another one of those late round flyers on corners like they did with Christian Benford. A guy that, if he turns out, fantastic. So let's move on. Let's kind of talk about this roster stuff here, guys. In terms of what's going on, and I understand it's a little small. I apologize. I don't know if my guy's in here tonight. Roy always likes to yell at me about the size of the font on the screen, but let's talk about it because they were talking about this on WGR, and not to give them any flack or whatever. I like Jeremy White; he's a good guy, but they were talking about roster, and one of the conversations was, where do they think position group wise, where do the Bills stand? And there was some sentiment that in terms of the Bills position group, that they're more in the 20s, and I really don't believe that the Bills are in a bad spot. I know that they lost a lot of veterans, and that's tough, right? That's a difficult position to be in. Which, side note, how do you feel about the 5th round linebackers are not built for the same anymore? The league won quicker linebackers now. Do you agree? Yeah. I mean, in terms of linebackers, it's a different age than the traditional Brian Urlacher thumper downhill middle linebacker. I mean, Terrell Bernard is not traditional. He's more of a sideline to sideline. He's more of a will, to be honest with you, if you're being fair. He's not a big guy. He's more of a kind of a smaller, rangy, athletic linebacker. But today, just kind of what it is nowadays. And you saw that back in the day with the Jaguars. They kind of started that. They bucked the trend, and they kind of changed the dynamic of what a linebacker is. So now you're seeing that for the Buffalo Bills. So in terms of roster, I really like some of these position groups. If you really look at the way things are built, right? So for a wide receiver group, I know it's tough because it's a lot of unknowns at this point, but if you really look at the way things are chopped up for the receiver core, I think they're in a good position, right? Obviously, Dalton Kincaid's a tight end, but I kind of lump him in with the receivers because I really believe he's a slow safety. I think that's a fair assessment. The Bills basically, they do play with 2 will linebackers. Dalton Kincaid he's a big wide receiver, right? Well, I mean, you just call him that. You talk Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Dalton Kincaid, and Dawson Knox. That's a really nice, just a skill position group alongside their running back group, which I think is one of the better ones in the NFL. James Cook, a very good running back, highly underrated, in fact. Then you've got Ty Johnson, who came along. I think any team would like to get their hands on him. Surprised they didn't sign him because I think he's actually very talented. And then Ray Davis, a nice little contributor. And then if you look at their offensive line, you got an offensive line that, one, didn't miss a snap last year, played all the games together as a group. Deion Dawkins signed that extension. David Edwards, obviously a bit of a utility, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's back on the bench Connor McGovern played left guard, going to move to center, but unless Cedric Van Pen Granger Cedric Van Pran Granger steps in there. Osiris Torrance had a very nice rookie year. And then Spencer Brown, who has kind of come along as that right tackle. A really nice group, a steady group, a group that with Aaron Cromer is just kind of growing together, becoming more consistent. I like that group. I think it's one of a much better group than a lot of teams have in the NFL, health-wise, and just continuity and consistency. They're a very, very good group. The quarterback room, the Bills are up there. Josh Allen, I think the second best quarterback in the NFL. Can be debated, sure. But you got him, and obviously then behind Josh Allen, you got Mitch Trubisky and Shane Buechele. I think it's a good group. You could do a lot worse than Mitch Trubisky as a backup quarterback. And people can say, oh, he's not that good. Most backups aren't good. So if you can find somebody that can at least throw a pass, a reasonable pass, I think you're in a good spot. Shane is kind of a growing work in progress, a guy that we poached from the Chiefs practice squad. I think he is eventually going to take over once Josh feels a little bit more comfortable there. So I think the offense is in a good spot. Obviously, a lot of this is going to be, I wouldn't say it's a massive, RJ, I don't think it's a massive downgrade, to be honest with you. I really don't. I think it is a downgrade, but I don't think it's a massive downgrade. I think Connor McGovern would be serviceable. I mean, it's tough when you're going from a guy like, Mitch Morse into that position, but I don't think it's a massive downgrade. I think Connor McGovern having a full off season and being with this group is going to be absolutely fine, especially under the tutelage of Aaron Cromer. But again, like I said, I think Cedric's probably going to end up winning that job, bumping Connor back to his natural spot. But like I said, offense, I think you're in a really nice position there. I think, to be honest with you, you got a good group. The wide receiver, the backup room is really nice. Matt Collins. I think people underappreciate Matt Collins. He's a better receiver than in terms of hands than Gabe Davis. Does all the dirty work. Is a better blocker, I think, than Gabe Davis. He may not be as explosive, but has the ability to be in the pinch good receiver. Andy Isabella didn't really get on the field, has good speed. KJ Hamler, I think, is a real question mark in terms of what he's going to be just because of the pericarditis that he had. If he could stay healthy, I think he adds a serious element to this offense. Tyrell Shavers, people still feel has something there. Obviously, we just signed Quintez Cephas, so that's an interesting one. But I think in totality, good options here for their offense, right? Really, really nice. Obviously, you Kincaid, Knox, Quentin Morris, Trey McKitty, Zach Davidson. That's one of the better tight end groups in the NFL. Then you go to the defense, right? Defensive end group, I think is nice. Greg Rousseau, still a work in progress. He's dealt with that foot injury, had injuries all over the line, which definitely does not help him and his growth trajectory. AJ Epinesa got that new contract, really kind of shined last year, and I think he's still coming into his own. Von Miller, I think you guys are going to be stunned this year. I know that I've said that before. Von Miller really started to come alive at the end of last season. Full year off season of him really getting healthy. You saw it with Trey White. I think he is getting there. And then on top of that, Javon Solomon, a nice addition. Casey Toohill, Kingsley Jonathan, Cameron Klein. A really nice group of defensive ends. Not super elite, but they've got some steady hands there. And you never know if Von Miller comes back, then you got your good, your closer. Who knows what AJ turns into, what Greg turns into. Maybe Javon Solomon is an ace in the hole for them. We'll see. Defensive tackle group, I think, is really nice. This is probably the biggest depth we've had at defensive tackle since Brandon Beane has been here. Daquan Jones back after signing an extension. Ed Oliver really silencing the critics with a very nice job this year after what people thought was a massive overpay. Now looks like a massive underpay of a contract. You got Dwayne Carter, that draft pick out of Duke. I think he is going to be a stud for this team. Austin Johnson and Deshaun Williams, friends of Daquan Jones, guys that can plug and play in a pinch. Both of them very massive individuals. Toolsy guys, not super high side, but more consistent plays. Then you got Eli Anku, which is obviously a guy that's been in the Bills program for 4 or 5 years at this point. So, another really nice addition. Then you look at the linebacker group. I think the Bills might have one of the best linebacker cores in the NFL. And I don't think that's largely that crazy to say. If you look at who the Bills have, you got Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard, who, to be honest, is a top 3 pairing in the NFL. I know I know Chiefs fans, Ravens fans, 49ers fans all want to chirp. Jets fans once in a while, which Jets fans are nuts. But a lot of these fan bases want to sit there and call their shots. But a lot of teams would love to have Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano. Very good linebacker core. Obviously, Matt's getting older, but you got people in the wings. You got Adejuan Olafashio that we just drafted this year. Dorian Williams, who's coming along. We drafted him last year. Needs a little bit more seasoning and a little bit more patience. He's very hot to hit the hole, so we'll see. Pause. Then you got Nick Morrow, who we signed from Philly. Deion Jones, who we just signed today from Carolina, of course. And then Balin Spector. Really nice group. Very nice depth. Very, very nice depth. And you saw what happened in the playoffs last year. That depth dropped quick when Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard won. So very, very nice to have all these additions right there. Then you get into the cornerback room. Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas. Very, very nice starting corners. Obviously, you saw Rasul Douglas trade from Green Bay last year. Very, very, very good. Graded out as one of, if not the best corner in the NFL post his trade to Buffalo. Christian Benford, steady Eddie in the secondary. I know a lot of people would love to see Kyer, and I think he'll get a good shot this year. But I think Christian Benford just is an easy plug and play because of how consistent he is in that secondary. And then you got, like I said, Kyer Elam, Jamarcus Ingram, who a guy that just continues to keep playing. I'm sorry, BK. There's no way anybody's taking Drew Tranquil over Matt Milano or Terrell Bernard. I like Drew Tranquil. They ain't in the same conversation. I like Nick Bolton. I think Nick Bolton has some talk to be in that conversation with the two of them, but Drew Tranquil does not, respectfully. And I like Drew. I think Drew is a gamer, but he's not in that conversation. But like I said, really nice cornerback room. Could add a couple more. A little bit more depth, but then you got that nickel position, Taron Johnson. I think personally, outside of L'Jarius Sneed, one of the best nickel corners, slot corners in the NFL. Cam Lewis, Daquan Hardy, the guy we drafted this year, and then in safety, a position that I think we'll see what happens. I think they might add some more there, but Taylor Rapp, Cole Bishop, obviously. Mike Edwards that we signed from Kansas City, DeMar Hamlin, Kendall Williamson. I think there's a little bit more growth there. I think there might be a little bit more to add play and add there because the drop-off, if one of them goes down, is pretty concerning. Pretty concerning. But overall, really not a bad position group. I think if you look at where the Bills are, you have to be satisfied with some of those position groups, right? Have to be satisfied. So hold on one second. I'm going to mute myself. I just got to sneeze. Pardon me there. Cheers. Like I said, good positions. I think one of the biggest concerns is special teams. Sam Martin was very underwhelming, and I'm hoping they maybe take a look at a punter. I mean, obviously they brought in the San Diego State punter as a UDFA, so we'll see what happens there. And then Tyler Bass. I love Tyler Bass. I really love Tyler Bass, but Tyler Bass was very questionable last year. Some very shaky starts for him. Some games that he should have made kicks. The Philly game was a big one. In the playoffs, he had a big time miss against the Chiefs. A miss that, I mean, truly was game defining. So I think special teams, those two, the punter, kicker, something that they really need to look to shore up if those two cannot get it together. So, I think there's questions, but more tackles in the Super Bowl than both of them. I mean, that's great. Tackles means your defensive line isn't doing their job. If we're being fair, that doesn't mean they're bad, but if they're just racking up a ton of tackles, that means that your defensive line is not doing its job. So, but needless to say, that's irrelevant. I like Drew Tranquil and Nick Bolton. That doesn't mean that they're better than Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano. It's just not true. It's fine. You can think that. I liked Willie Gay. Willie Gay and Nick Bolton was a good group. I still didn't think they were better, but they're good. The only one that I think is really up to snuff is the Ravens and the 49ers. That's it. You know, I think if we're really being fair, it is what it is. So, but needless to say, we're there. Before I get too much further, guys, I want to tell you about our sponsor here at Cover One and at Buffalo Late Night. That is Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the number one, or once again, excited. I'm sorry. I am. Blah, blah, blah. Let's start over. Cover One is excited to once again partner with the most dynamic name in fantasy football, Underdog Fantasy. I want to tell you about the easiest way to get some action in the NFL. It's Underdog Fantasy and their pick'em game. Just pick higher or lower on your favorite or least favorite player's stats, and you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Underdog keeps it super simple with their easy-to-use website and mobile apps. Pick between 2 and 5 players to pick out your pick'em entry. Get every pick right. Take home some cold, hard cash. Use code COVER1 and get your first deposit of $200 doubled. Underdog Fantasy is also the best and easiest place to play all fantasy sports. Not only do they have the NFL, but they also have Major League Baseball, NBA, and more, including horse racing. So if you're into the Kentucky Derby, get in on that. But get in on the fun today. Join Underdog Fantasy. Use code COVER1. So there we are, guys. That is the little blurb I've got for you. But let's talk about, like I talked about the roster, and I kind of want to finish this off. Wrap this up so we can kind of talk about the schedule stuff, because I know a lot of you guys want to kind of chop into that, which, side note, I appreciate, again, you guys being here. Hit the thumbs up, rate, review, share. It means the world to me, truly. But in terms of this roster, I don't think they're I don't think they're the bottom. Do I think they're probably 6 through 10? Maybe they'd creep into top 5. I think there's a couple of position groups I'm concerned with, but I think, you know, somewhere between 6 and 10 in the NFL as roster-wise, I think is a good spot. That could obviously become higher based on how the team plays, how the position groups kind of, unfold in front of our eyes. It could get worse, obviously, based on how things kind of translate or transpire on the football field. But I think they got a good spot. And, in terms of one thing that we talked about, receiver, I do think there is room for growth there. And obviously, I know that there's a lot of names here. You can see them. Keon Coleman, Matt Collins, Tyrell Shavers, Quintez Cephas, Khalil Shakir, Justin Shorter, KJ Hamler, Xavier Johnson, Curtis Samuel, Andy Isabella, Brian Thompson, Lawrence Keys III. A lot of names, but not super overwhelming. There's some good groups there. I've told you, they've got a good quality group. Consistency is key. But I do think there is room to add more. Could they add a really big veteran? We've talked about it. We talked about it at the draft. Like a Justin Jefferson, a Cortland Sutton, Brandon Ayuk, right? T. Higgins. Could they add one of those? Sure, it's possible. The Bills have a ton of draft assets next year. But I think, and I kind of talked about this on my Twitter, which again, follow me on Twitter at the Thomas DeLoss. I think next year is really where you're going to be looking in terms of adding to this roster for wide receiver, because the group of wide receivers next year in free agency is loaded. Loaded. You've got Justin Jefferson, T. Higgins, Brandon Ayuk, DeAndre Hopkins, Stephon Diggs. I know people are saying, why would I mention Stephon Diggs? You never know. Who knows? Maybe they mend their ties and he decides he wants to come home and finish off his career here. Who knows? But lots of really good options. Really good options. And the Bills are going to have a ton of cap space and a lot of draft picks. There's room for them to go and swing for the fences. So, never know. I could see them doing that next year and being ultra aggressive. Brandon Beane saying, hey, we got to do this. But let's move on. Let's talk about the final topic tonight. That is about the schedule, ladies and gentlemen. We are 1 week away from the NFL schedule release. A very exciting time. I think this is the second year. I think today is what? Is it the second? It is. This would be the second year in a row that the schedule release fell on my show, which, hey, cool with me. I love it. We'll do a live show next year, and we'll talk about it as it happens. By the way, throw it in the chat. I want to hear what you guys have to say. I did put it on Twitter earlier today, which if you ever wonder why I mention my Twitter, I use my Twitter as kind of a parameter and a show builder. So if you ever look at my Twitter over the week leading up to my show, a lot of the stuff on my Twitter is precursor to what I'm going to talk about on my show. It makes it very easy. Makes my mind one track. So, but let me know. The projected reveal is the 9th, which would be next Thursday, which makes sense because last year was May 11th. So same time frame. But I want to know what you guys think. Put it in the chat. Who do you think should be the home opener for the Buffalo Bills? And there's some really intriguing options here, right? You got the Jaguars, Titans, Cardinals, 49ers, Jets, Patriots, Dolphins, and Chiefs as home opponents. And there's some intriguing matchups, obviously. The Chiefs being one of them. That, man, what an incredible atmosphere it would be at Highmark Stadium for the Kansas City Chiefs to come in and be the home opener. Like, what a draw that would be. The home opener is already the best. And if you've never been to the Bills home opener, let alone a Bills game, I implore you. The game, the stadium, obviously the brand new stadium's coming in 2 years. But the home opener, my wife loves going. We'll see if she can go this year because she's going to be very pregnant. We have, if you don't know, I've talked about it before. My wife and I have one son. My son Griffin, he's a year and a half. We also have a second child on the way because, hell, why not? Why waste time? We have a second child on the way due October 2nd. So it's going to be a very intriguing football season for me. But the home opener is bananas. Heightened expectations. Crowd is raucous. It is normally really nice weather. It's going to be wild. Having the Chiefs there would be fun. Again, Jaguars would be a good experience. Two very good teams. Obviously we played them last year in London. So having them home on the home opener would be a lot of fun. They could start us as a divisional opponent, getting it right out of the gate against maybe the Jets like we did last year. We played the Jets in their house on the first game. Maybe we play them home here and right the wrongs. That'd be a lot of fun. 49ers, a team that was very good. Obviously, you saw them last year in the Super Bowl. A team that I think a lot of people thought really could make waves, and I think can this year. So we'll see what they do. And, obviously with the connections and Brandon Ayuk and all that, that's going to be a good one. The Cardinals are a very good team. Kyler Murray adding in with Marvin Harrison Jr. That team is going to be a hell of a lot of fun. And then who knows? Do they want the Patriots? Do they want the Dolphins? Or maybe the Tennessee Titans, who continue to add. They added L'Jarius Sneed. They added Kelvin Ridley. You saw they added another option today, another receiver in Tyler Boyd. That team is going to be a blast. So tons there. Tons of options in terms of who they could play. So it'd be very intriguing to see how the Bills shake out at home. I think there are plenty of very, very good storylines. Personally, I think if I had to project who I think they're going to start, it would not stun me if they went right out of the gate against the Dolphins. If they said, you know what, let's get the Dolphins in Buffalo right out of the gate, not going to play in Miami, that early part, right? Do that. I think that's intriguing. And then you play Miami later in the year, so Miami doesn't have to come here in the winter. We go there later where it's not crazy hot. If Austin doesn't get clean, do we trade for Douglas? If we get a third, does it change our draft strategy? I don't know who you're talking about, Austin or Douglas. You got to give me first names. But I do think in terms of opponents, I think the Dolphins would be a hell of an opponent. Obviously, that, they were there right there. Yeah, Stone Cold Steve. What? Would be a fun one. Big time implications right out of the gate. You start 1-0. I mean, you're really kind of putting yourself in the driver's seat for the division. But then you're also talking about some other ones. If you talk about the Jaguars, the Titans, or the Chiefs, you're talking about three teams who probably are all vying for the playoffs this year. I don't know about the Titans. We'll see what Will Levis does. But, man, with all the talent they've put around him at wide receiver, DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, if he can't succeed, he ain't going to succeed at all. So Rasul Douglas and Alex Austin. If Alex Austin is good, I don't know. It's hard to say because I like Alex Austin, but Rasul Douglas is you're talking a bona fide one. I mean, maybe Alex Austin gets to that point, but I think it was more out of dire straits that they played him, not he's the best, right? Like, would he be the best on the team? I don't know, maybe. It's hard to say. The way that the coaching staff was last year, they were quite fickle, if we're being fair. So I don't know. That's kind of a hypothetical. It's hard to kind of measure out. I think they probably still would, because when Trey went down, you needed somebody they could trust in a pinch. So they did that. Maybe they would have brought him in, but I mean, they got Rasul Douglas pretty quickly at that point. So I don't know. That's a hard one to really say. But like I said, the Jaguars, the Chiefs, both of them obviously are going to be playoff teams. Getting an opponent right out of the gate that that you're going to be playing, that are both teams healthy, because that's the other part. Having those two teams play right out of the gate, you're talking, the one thing that Mike North always says with Sal Capaccio, they do their scheduling podcast every year, is you could save a matchup like the Chiefs and Bills, but what happens if a massive injury happens? Then that matchup loses its allure. You could save a 49ers and Bills, but let's say the 49ers don't end up being good this year. I'd be stunned. But now you got a dud of a game, right? Same thing with the Cardinals, right? You play the Cardinals out of you play them later. Cardinals could be out of contention by week 10. And then that game is just meaningless, especially if you put it in prime time. So it's hard to say in some of these matchups where exactly they would kind of fall. But I do think there's some really, really good ones in there. And then on the away side, guys, I would not be stunned if the Bills start their season in Houston. I would not be stunned. We could be the home opener for the Houston Texans. The Stephon Diggs Bills connection, just the team itself, the Bills in Houston have a lot of parallels. Josh Allen's first playoff game, that would be a big timer. Bills and the Lions. The Lions home opener would be an intriguing one there. Obviously, the Bills away schedule is a gauntlet. The schedule in itself is a gauntlet. You got the Texans, Colts, Rams, Seahawks, Jets, Patriots, Dolphins, Ravens, Lions. It is a schedule of hell. This schedule in totality might be the hard, and obviously it's on paper, but I'll tell you, this is going to be the schedule that's going to tell how good this Bills team is and how good of a coach Sean McDermott truly is. This could make or break Sean McDermott, to be honest with you. And I love Sean McDermott, but this could make or break Sean McDermott because this schedule is brutal. I mean, if you look, Jaguars, playoff team. 49ers, playoff team. Titans, who knows? Cardinals, who knows? Chiefs, playoff team. Dolphins were a playoff team last year. Jets, with Aaron Rodgers coming back, expect to be a playoff team. I don't know about the Patriots. I think they're still young. Texans, playoff team. Colts, really right there. Rams, playoff team. Seahawks, playoff team. Ravens, playoff team. Lions, playoff team. Out of all their opponents, a lot of playoff teams, a lot of good quarterbacks. They're playing pretty much top-tier quarterbacks all across the board. Trevor Lawrence, Will Levis, Kyler Murray, Brock Purdy, Aaron Rodgers, Tua Tagovailoa, C.J. Stroud, Richardson. Why am I blanking on the Rams quarterback? I always do this. It's not Sam Bradford. I can't. I always get this guy's name mixed up. Geno Smith, Lamar Jackson, Jared Goff, Matt Stafford. Thank you very much. I always get him so mixed up every time. But you're talking almost every matchup is against a bona fide good quarterback. This is going to be a gauntlet of a season for the Buffalo Bills. Gauntlet. So, guys, I think, next week we obviously will have the schedule release. We'll do it in a nice little show. I'll probably get some guys. Maybe we'll get the Bills guys on here. I know Tilt always does a nice job with his presentation skills, but next week we're going to find out the schedule and we'll chop it up. We'll talk about what we think in terms of how the schedule is going to really kind of break out and what we think. But guys, I think a lot of optimism. This draft was fantastic. What I do want to say, while I have you, I just want to thank you guys very, very much. I mentioned this on Twitter myself. I do want to thank you for all the support. For me, it means the world to me. This has been a dream of mine since high school. I went to school for this, but really took time away, kind of went off the beaten path, did other things, kind of came back to this later in life when I had an opportunity. But I do thank you for supporting me and really kind of, being behind me on this. It means the world to me and my journey being content creator with Cover One. So thank you for that. But aside from that, I want to thank you for all the support through the NFL draft and all the support you've given us here at Cover One in terms of, being behind us, showing how much it matters to us, subscribing to the Cover One Pass, subscribing to the Cover One YouTube channel, subscribing to me or following me on Twitter, which you can do at the Thomas DeLoss, means the world to all of us. Truly, truly, truly. So thank you for all of that. Again, guys, make sure you hit the thumbs up, rate, review, and share this with everybody. Means the world to all of us here at Cover One. So I'm going to wrap this guys up, guys. We are going to be, we'll be coming back here next week and, getting back to the nitty gritty, getting back to everything in terms of the Buffalo Bills. We talked about the schedule. We talked about the roster. We talked about the draft, and we will talk about it all next week and how it comes down with the schedule for the Buffalo Bills in 2024. So, guys, I love you. It means the world to me. I appreciate you. We will see you guys next week here on Buffalo Late Night. Get excited. Get ready. The season's coming upon us. Let's go, Buffalo.